If I could go back in time and take birth control before my kid, I would. I know logically I'm a good, loving parent, and I try my absolute best to be there for my baby, but deep down, I kind of regret becoming a mother. I miss my life before. I just feel like if I could go back and prevent my pregnancy without having an abortion, I would. I feel so bad thinking this, and it makes me want to cry, but I can't help it. Late at night, when I'm alone, I dream of a childless life again. I dream of doing what I want, when I want. I hate the feedings every 2 hours, and the crying makes me want to run away. This is a real post from a woman in a Regretful Parents community. As women in a Western society, we were told to graduate high school, get a career, find a partner, get married, and have a baby. And all of these, especially that final step of motherhood, is kind of treated as an expected, mandatory milestone, an automatic transition that's supposed to come naturally to all women. But what happens when women check the box simply because they feel like they have to, only to realize that they hate being a mom? I want to say before we start this episode that I am not shaming these regretful moms at all. However, I think it's important that we call out the societal expectations on women that push them to have kids even if they don't want any. The truth is that being unwanted and resented deeply affects kids themselves. Even as somebody who wants kids myself, I believe that everyone deserves access to real stories, real data, and information so that they can make a decision about whether they really want kids or they don't before it's too late. Having children when you are on the fence about whether you want kids or not can be one of the most destructive, harmful things you can do, not only for your child, but for yourself. So without further ado, let's dive into this topic. Welcome back to Do You Want to Hear Something Awful? I'm your host, Allison, and on this podcast, we investigate the toxic structures shaping our world, we talk about the psychological fallout, and I like to give you concrete ways that you can change the narrative and make the world a better place. Today, we are looking at a silently growing crisis, maternal regret. We are talking about the moms who love their children as human beings but completely regret the institution of motherhood and hate being a parent. Grab a drink because we are going to break down how society sets women up to fail by hiding the true cost of parenting. The landmark Prague Cohort Study found that children from unwanted accidental pregnancies were 4 times more likely to develop an insecure attachment style compared to the control group of planned children. Even though the mothers provided adequate physical care like food, clothing, and shelter, the subtle emotional withdrawal of the mothers resulted in the children internalizing a core belief that they were inherently defective, a burden, or a mistake. As adults, individuals like this suffer from significantly higher rates of clinical depression, social isolation, and chronic relationship instability. Growing up as an accident or a regretted asset inside a household leaves deep attachment wounds. The child will internalize a core belief that their existence is an inconvenience to the people who are tasked with protecting them. This usually manifests as an anxious attachment style or disorganized attachment style, intense existential guilt, and a lifelong compulsion to overachieve just to justify the space they take up in the world. Our culture has a systemic issue with how we assign worth to women. From a young age, women are implicitly conditioned to believe that their ultimate value, their peak fulfillment, is unlocked exclusively by becoming a mom. If a woman chooses to remain child-free, she is met with pity or labeled as selfish or shallow or incomplete, or told, most commonly, that one day she will change her mind. There are countless of posts on online forums of moms saying exactly this. I'm a 34-year-old mom to a toddler, and I'm sitting in my car crying because I am so resentful. I never actually had baby fever. I grew up in a traditional community where you were raised to believe your only purpose in life was to be a wife and a mother. Every single holiday, my family would ask when I was going to give them grandbabies. When I focused on my master's degree, my aunts told me degrees won't keep me warm at night and that I was being selfish. People look at you like you're broken or an incomplete woman if you say you don't want kids. So I caved. I did what I was supposed to do to fit in and make everyone proud. And now I absolutely hate it. I love my daughter, but I despise being a mom. I gave up my career, my identity, and my mental health just to fulfill a societal expectation that means nothing to me. If you are on the fence and only doing this to appease your family or look complete to the world, please don't do it. r/regretful parents has become a popular Reddit forum full of parents sharing their breakdowns and their regret around having children. Here is another mother. You're socially allowed to say that raising children is hard but so worth it, but not that you did not feel that instant love and connection once the baby was placed on your chest. You're allowed to be tired but not say, if I knew sooner how hard this was, I wouldn't have had kids. The second you say, I regret every decision that led me to being a parent, you're told you must be mentally ill and are socially shunned. Oh, and don't you dare to tell other people to reconsider their decision to not have kids. After all, you're allowed to be miserable in silence, but definitely do not speak the truth to others who haven't had kids yet. As long as the whole stigma around regretting parenthood stays intact, people will continue suffering in agonizing silence and isolation. This person is talking about the social pressure that creates an environment where women don't ask themselves if they want kids. They just map out when it's supposed to happen or let it happen to them. They enter parenthood on autopilot and are driven by external expectations rather than having enthusiastic internal consent, which is a reflection of greater issues in our world. This post completely captures the grief of identity erasure and the pressure of modern mom culture. I went from being an ambitious, creative woman with a vibrant social circle to a hollowed-out catering service for a toddler. If I tried to do anything for myself, the mom guilt from society is overwhelming. I look back at my pre-kid life and I feel like I'm mourning a dead friend. I miss her so much. I love my child, but I utterly despise the reality of my life now. If I could snap my fingers and go back to the day before I got pregnant, I would do it without a shred of guilt. I traded my entire being for a role I absolutely hate, all because I thought it was just what women were supposed to do. The reality is that society does not tell women how brutal having a kid is. The cultural narrative purposely focuses on the romanticized highlights of nursery decorating, first steps, holiday outfits, family photos. It leaves out the sleep deprivation, the identity loss, the strain on your relationship, the sheer financial stress of raising a child in the economy we have today. But here is my hot take. It is your non-negotiable responsibility to research parenting before you commit to it. Everybody deserves the education and access to research and conversations and communities where there is honest dialogue about the realities of having children. On an online forum, one user who became a mom says it exactly like this. I see so many friends testing the waters of parenthood like it's a hobby they can just return if they don't like the fit. I did the exact same thing because society painted this gorgeous, curated picture of motherhood that conveniently ignored the loss of self, the financial bleeding, and the way your marriage turns into a business transaction about who is more exhausted. Looking back, I feel like an idiot. I researched my car purchase for 3 weeks, but I made the biggest, most irreversible decision of my life based on vague Instagram vibes and it'll all work out advice from my own mother. If you are on the fence, do not treat a human being like a trial subscription. If you aren't 100% sure, you aren't ready, and it is honestly cruel to the child to use them as a way to find out who you are. Here's another example from a community of regretful parents. Quote, I am so angry at myself. I grew up in a culture where you get married and you immediately start trying for a baby. It was just the next expected step on the conveyor belt of life. I didn't think about it. I didn't research the cost of childcare, the psychological toll of never having a single second of silence, or how it would erase my identity. I just thought, well, everyone else does it, so I will too. I romanticized the hell out of it, bought the cute clothes, planned the nursery, looked forward to the holidays. No one tells you about the daily mind-numbing grind. I am miserable. I look at my 4-year-old and I feel nothing but deep, boiling resentment that my entire life is no longer mine. It is profoundly unfair to him because he didn't ask to be here. I treated the decision to have a child with less critical thought than a car purchase. And now a blameless kid is paying the price for my lack of research. If you are doing this because it's what people do, stop and wake up. We live in an era with infinite access to data. When people purchase a house or a car, they spend hours reading reviews, auditing finances, getting loans approved, running metrics on how it will affect their lives and their financial matters over the next few years. But people who are about to have children don't treat this irreversible 18-plus year contract for an entire human life with the same respect that they do for these other big life decisions. They actually probably research it less than a weekend vacation or road trip. Relying on the toxic generational phrase, "you'll just figure it out when they get here," and "but you were born to be a mom," is wildly irresponsible. If you are on the fence, if you don't know whether you actually want the grinding reality of raising a child, you don't have to have one. Children don't exist to help you find who you are. They are not an experiment you can take back. They are not a hobby. They are not your identity. One user sparked a discussion about how society holds pet owners or hobbyists to a higher ethical standard than people bringing an entire human being into the world. Quote, "I did so much research before I even got a cat. I had everything I needed before I even had chosen a cat. But most parents can't be arsed to do any basic research?" Another user on the same thread chimed in to support the point by comparing it to setting up a fish tank. Quote, "I keep aquariums. If people can put that much thought and effort into fish, of all things, there's no excuse why parents aren't held accountable for not doing even the basics of preparing for a new human being." Another thread discusses how people blindly follow the societal pipeline without looking at the life-altering realities of it. Quote, "I do think that people should do some of their own research before having a kid. It annoys the ever-living hell out of me when well-educated people put more research into buying a car than bringing new life into the world." Once you have a child, you cannot take that decision back. And women in our society deserve to know that they are not obligated to have children, and they have every right to research, to ask questions, to get involved in these conversations long before there is a child who arrives. This child did not choose to be here. You brought them here. Because at the end of the day, when a child comes into the world and they aren't truly wanted and there's that resentment, it hurts not only the child, but also the mom. Here's another woman sharing a heartbreaking confession that perfectly captures the total loss of self and bitter frustration with modern motherhood culture. Quote, "I miss my old life so much it physically hurts. I used to be a person with hobbies, a thriving career, a personality, and passions. Now my entire existence has completely been swallowed by being mom. The toxic culture around motherhood tells you that you're supposed to find ultimate fulfillment in sacrificing every single shred of your identity for your child, but it's a lie. I despise the endless playdates, the mundane routines, and the constant toxic positivity from other parents who pretend this is bliss. I look in the mirror and I don't even recognize the ghost staring back at me anymore. I love my kid, but if I could go back in time and choose myself instead, I would do it in a heartbeat. I hate that I let society trick me into trading my entire identity for a role that leaves me feeling completely empty and dead inside." This comment just breaks my heart for this mom, for the child. It is so unfair for a kid to be a test run to see if a mom likes being a parent, and unfair for a mom to feel pressured to have a child and to be told these narratives by society that having a child is something that you are born for, that it's your purpose, that it's fulfilling, that it's fun, when in reality, that's not always the case for everybody. And I think that there are so many parents who genuinely enjoy being parents. And then there's also this culture that is toxic that encourages parents who don't like being parents to play pretend. There needs to be more open conversations about the realities of parenthood and the sacrifices that you are signing up for. Parenthood doesn't come with a manual. It's a contract, but it's one that you don't actually physically sign. So maternal regret is a social taboo. There's already so much mom guilt and shaming in our world. So women who are feeling this way often feel trapped, and there are a lot of anonymous communities online where they can bond with other women over their regretful parenthood. And one of the most interesting communities is on Reddit called r/regretfulparents. I want to look at a couple other case studies left by these moms. One of them posted a breakdown about having 2 children because her family felt like it was the next logical, fulfilling step of her being a successful adult. She wrote, quote, "I felt like I was checking off a box on a list. I thought the maternal instinct would just kick in, but it never did. I take care of them, I feed them, I clothe them, but I feel like an absolute prisoner in my own life. I miss my freedom, I miss my autonomy, and I look at my kids every day wishing I could just delete the decision." Another mother shared a post about the total lack of preparation she experienced. "No one told me about the physical and mental reality of having children. My relationship with my husband is completely deteriorated. I am trapped in an endless loop of cooking, cleaning, and managing tantrums. I don't hate my child, but I utterly despise being a mother. If I could go back in time, I would stay child-free in a heartbeat." We have to look at the psychological effect that this environment creates for children. Children are hypersensitive and they pick up parental emotional energy way more quickly than many people understand. They don't need to read an online confession to sense this resentment, withdrawal, and indifference from a very young age. They are highly emotionally sensitive, and believe it or not, they can sense your resentment towards them. In fact, developmental psychology shows that facial electromyography reveals that infants as young as 4 to 6 months old can accurately differentiate between a genuinely joyful face and a face masking negative emotions or indifference. And they can do that within 50 milliseconds of exposure. When a parent is experiencing resentment or regret, their face will continuously display micro expressions. These are involuntary muscle movements around the eyes or the mouth. A child's brain will sense these drops in emotional warmth instantly, and it will register the home environment as unpredictable or unsafe before they even have the language skills to understand what's going on. Parents who were on the fence about having children will often end up with a parenting style called parental conditional positive regard, which is where affection and approval are granted only when a child meets expectations. Now, this could be explicitly, but in a lot of cases for these parents who feel like they're playing pretend, it can be those micro expressions that we talked about. So parental conditional positive regard serves as a trigger for maladaptive perfectionism, where a child will develop a drive to be flawless, be overly critical, have an intense fear of failure that ends up crippling them for a lot of their life. Studies in child development show that 70% of children who perceive low emotional warmth or underlying resentment from a primary caretaker develop hypercompensatory behavioral traits. The child will internalize the toxic belief that their mere existence is an inconvenience, and their survival instinct triggers a defense mechanism. If I am completely flawless, if I win every award, get straight A's, never make a mistake, my parents will finally be glad that I exist. How many of us have felt that feeling before? A lot of people joke about it being an eldest child thing, the eldest child pressure. And if you think about it, it's because as the first child, our parents were thrust into parenthood, into motherhood, into fatherhood, without understanding what they were getting themselves into. And so elder children of the past generation ended up absorbing the shock of their parents' resentment, their surprise, their not being prepared, their regret. It manifests often as burnout, guilt, and inability to rest in adulthood because self-worth becomes tied to external validation. Our generation has a chance to break this cycle. We deserve to have real conversations about parenthood and everything that goes into it. To allow people who don't want to have kids to feel free from the pressure to do so, and to make the people who do want to have kids even more excited to have that be a part of their story, a part of their lives. But probably the most dangerous aspect of this online venting culture that I don't think people talk about enough is the fact that everything you post online becomes permanent. The internet is unerasable. You can have people clear your search history, your posts, delete it all day, but at the end of the day, there are screenshots, there are reposts, there are ways that people can save things and dig them out from internet history. And can you imagine being a 14-year-old kid Googling something casual about your life only to stumble across this detailed post that's describing exactly your life that you end up realizing is written by your own mother about how you ruined her life, destroyed her marriage, or made her miserable, or a coworker or friend stumbling across your post and through these details being able to tie it back to you? That is a catastrophic level of trauma to inflict on yourself and those in your circle. You might think, oh, Allison, this would never happen to me, but there are a few real-world examples of this, including when a 16-year-old child actually discovered their mother's own posts on the r/regretfulparents subreddit. The teenager posted for help on the forum, and here's what she said. Quote, "I've recently found my mom's Reddit account and discovered she is part of the Regretful Parents sub. I've seen her comments and posts. I've learned things about how she feels about being my mom and the suffering I've been putting her through just by existing. I can't look at her the same anymore. I can't be around her without thinking I'm a living prison sentence for her. I knew she has had a hard and struggling life, but to think of how much of it was tied to my birth, the things she's been feeling and thinking all this time I had no idea about, it has destroyed me." Whether you think that the details will tie it back to you or not, the chances are your child might accidentally find your Reddit username. They might accidentally see the texts you've sent to other parents. They might be able to have their own Facebook one day and see the Facebook post you posted in a Facebook group. These online spaces that were meant for healthy venting and connecting can actually become really hyper-negative echo chambers that can leave people feeling more discouraged than uplifted. And it's important that we make sure that they remain educational and don't further spread a paralyzing toxic narrative that hurts moms and their families. And especially if you are stuck in a relationship you are not 100% sold on, do not feel bad if you don't want children. Many women get stuck in relationships that are abusive because they had children before they could ever think about how those dynamics would play out. According to clinical research from organizations like the Oasis Domestic Abuse Service, 30% of all domestic abuse cases begin specifically when the survivor becomes pregnant. Psychological studies show that abusers view a partner's pregnancy as a threat to their dominance or loss of personal control. To counteract this, they will often intentionally escalate psychological aggression and coercive control that reinforces their position as authority in the household. There was a comprehensive meta-analysis published in PLOS Medicine, and researchers found a correlation between intimate partner violence and unintended pregnancies driven by reproductive coercion. This includes tampering with birth control, even forced unprotected sex, whether that be violent force or through coercing a woman by saying the man doesn't want to use protection, the man doesn't want to use a condom, or explicit coercion of the decision-making process, guilt, manipulation, making the woman feel like the relationship is at risk if they don't want to be a mom. The data out there shows that abusers used pregnancy as a tactic to make survivors physically, logistically, and financially dependent on them forever, to make them exponentially less able to leave the relationship. This, again, goes back into the fact that having children for many moms doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a mistake, it feels like an accident, or it feels like something they were forced to do, whether that's by society or explicitly coerced and forced to do by an abusive partner. And I'm here to say, please don't let anyone pressure you into having children. If your partner is pushing you, then you should walk away from them, walk away from that abusive situation. If parents choose to bring a human being into this world, because it is a choice, it is not an inevitability. Parents owe them protection, not just from physical harm, not just by meeting their physical basic needs, but from the parents themselves' own existential frustration. Parents need to do structural research before they ever commit to having a child or they step into the delivery room. Parents need to treat the decision to have a child with immense weight And parents need to make sure that what they're sharing online is appropriate and that it will not come back to bite them or hurt their children, because there are some words that you can never take back. Now, our goal is to never leave you trapped in the darkness, and this was a very intense episode. So here are 3 pieces of positive news showing how the world is actually shifting towards a healthier model of family dynamics, and why conversations like we just had on this podcast are so integral to getting our world there. According to recent international public health data, unintended pregnancy rates have dropped significantly over the last decade because of reproductive education and family planning resources. So that means that more children than ever are being born into homes that actually are prepared to welcome them. The other thing is that large-scale sociological trends have shown a shift that is positive in how society views adults who choose not to have children. The historical pressure to achieve social validity through reproduction is finally collapsing, allowing individuals to choose to be child-free and enjoy personal autonomy, career development, or community service without facing any guilt or shame. Clinical therapy associations have also reported a rise in couples pursuing proactive pre-parenting counseling. And so instead of jumping blindly into family life based on societal momentum, everyday people are now processing their own childhood trauma, thinking about their communication styles, their sleep habits, and establishing realistic expectations before committing to pregnancy, or if they're already pregnant, before even having the baby. Here are some action steps that I always like to leave my podcast listeners with. If somebody comes to you and they're expressing parental regret, it's important to remind them that 2 things can be true at the same time. You can deeply love your children and still also deeply regret the role and realities of parenthood. Parental regret is one of our society's heaviest taboos and breeds guilt and shame. And so it's important in these conversations to remove the moral judgment, to acknowledge the feeling of regret as a complex emotional state. It's not a sign you're a bad person, and it's not a sign you're a horrible parent. You can love the child and dislike the lifestyle of being a parent at the same time. But fighting this reality causes suffering. Fighting the reality that you are a parent, that you have a child, is ultimately what causes those microfacial expressions, what causes the resentment. Embracing this change so that the energy can be shifted towards what you can control, what you can change, whether that's boundaries, coping mechanisms, personal time. That is what is important and what can really improve the lives of regretful parents. And also remind your friends that parenthood is dynamic. These high dependent stages of early childhood will be over eventually, and you might feel different about parenthood when the child is a teenager or an adult. I think there's also a large culture in our society around being a perfect parent. People believe that parenthood has to be filled with this effortless, uncomplicated joy. But we need to set realistic expectations and allow room for good enough parenting, because this removes daily stress that can build up resentment. And parents, I know I talked a lot in this podcast about doing your research, but if you're a mom listening to this and you relate to these regretful parent posts, forgive your past or present limitations. You don't need to succumb to guilt. That doesn't make anything better for anyone. Parents should accept their emotional capacity that they have currently and just focus on what you can do around kindness and basic needs and creating emotional and physical safety for that child. I also think our society really pushes moms to give up their identity in order to be a mom. Every mother needs to have an identity outside of being a mom. Parental regret, as you can see from these comments, stems from a loss of independence, autonomy, identity. And that is why, for moms, it is crucial to identify your hobbies, your career aspirations, your social circles before you become a parent, or even after if you need to. and aggressively carve out time for them and make it non-negotiable so you don't lose yourself. Resentment thrives in isolation and exhaustion, and so people should openly communicate with their partners, their family members, or even paid support networks in order to share that emotional and physical workload, as that workload is often what can make women feel like they're trapped or prisoners in their own family. It's important for parents to also create micro moments of peace, micro moments of not having to be around your child, because it can help lower your baseline stress levels and give you some of that autonomy back. And all of us here can do better in supporting moms by taking away mom guilt, taking away the mom shame, encouraging moms to have their own identity outside of parenthood, and always being able to meet people with compassion and just normalize these feelings and aggressively have conversations about the realities of being a parent so that future generations will not find themselves in this regretful parenting position, because it is an irreversible decision that affects parents and their babies for the rest of their lives. And while I did focus most of this episode on moms, because moms are the ones who do experience the brunt of mom guilt, mom shame, and this gender role expectation from society, know that this also can affect dads as well. It's not necessarily just moms, but I'm focusing this episode on moms simply because our society puts most of the burden of parenting onto mothers. So come back next week if you would like to hear more awful things. This was a very heavy podcast, so feel free to leave some comments if you have any thoughts. And we look forward to sharing more awful things with you on our next episode. See you then.